Welcome back to the 411 on Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Lovell. Back here on the podcast, and what do you know? We're talking about WWE releases yet again. And on Thursday, you know by now that WWE released 8 more talent, and that was John Morrison. The 3 remaining members of Hit Row after BFAB was released earlier this month: Tegan Nox, Drake Maverick, Jaxson, Ryker, and Shane Thorne. And usually when we have done these podcasts, which have become all too common at this point, based on how many talent have been released, but usually when we do it, we try to do it, right after and discuss it and just kind of give some instant feedback. But I wanted to wait a little bit longer on this one because as we say every time, there's always more that comes out about, what could have led to some of this, the possibilities surrounding these releases. And so that gave us, another sort of news cycle to be able to see what may have went into some of this. And it still seems the same as it's been. They were given the budget cuts reason, which, as we all know, is not really anything more than a corporate way of telling people they're fired. It really, in WWE land, has nothing to do with how much money they're making or the revenue. I've seen some people make, the point that yes, the WWE roster is loaded and was once they started, picking up a lot of talent before the pandemic, and the roster had gotten to a pretty high number of talent there. And you can understand that perhaps they have sort of made the decision that, hey, we just don't want that many people on the roster and we're going to do this. But on the flip side, if that is your justification for it, the whole budget cut stuff is just no one's buying it. And I think at this point, it's how WWE goes about the stuff more so than perhaps the actual moves themselves. And I think it just, we are still in an era where, you're looking at this and, as we've said, we've talked about it. I mean, ROH is going on hiatus and we don't know exactly what things will look like for Ring of Honor, when it does come back and what, how much change that's going to be. There are a lot of places for talent to go, but it's still something that, when you see this many people let go from WWE, and we talked about it on the previous episodes, and we've talked about sort of the reasoning behind it and how it is presented as though, some of these talent perhaps did not reach their potential or were not, of value to this potential roster. But as I've said so many times, yes, you can perhaps find ways to blame some of that on the talent if you're WWE, but at the end of the day, WWE is scripted entertainment, and how you portray these talent is going to go into whether or not, they are successful. And that is in WWE's hands. Yes, it's also in the talent's hands because they have to be the ones to execute it and go out there and actually, make things work. But on the other side of that, it's just like, this is WWE has all of these talents within the palm of their hand, and it's their choice, Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, whoever, creatively, to put these people in a position to where they can succeed. And so that's why I think when you look at this latest round of releases, there are going to be a lot of places for them to go and have a chance to have success. Of course, we know AEW, Impact. Like we said, when Ring of Honor comes back, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but they've kind of, if it was in the current situation and you just had Ring of Honor continuing as normal, that would be another place. But, there's a lot of other options. New Japan, seemingly at this point, the restrictions are not as, bad as they were at one point during the pandemic. So maybe that's more of an option. You do have places, not just New Japan proper, but you've got New Japan Strong. You've got, GCW. We've talked about GCW and what they've tried to do creatively to put on, some pretty entertaining shows. And there's a lot of other options out there. And so I think that is obviously the good thing that you can look at and say, all right, there's not going to be a shortage of options. But when you, again, go back to this particular round and we're talking about the creative aspect of giving people an opportunity to succeed. I mean, yes, you start with John Morrison. He's the biggest name of this group just because of how long he's been associated with WWE, even though, his latest return, I don't know that there was a lot that you could look at with his latest return just outside of the stuff that he did with Miz, and said, if you felt like WWE hit a home run with John Morrison in this particular stop for him. And I've just always been curious about that because this is clearly someone that, I mean, he has the charisma. He's very entertaining. Certainly, he can go in the ring. But this does seem to be a scenario where you look at someone like John Morrison, and WWE looks at it and says, "All right, he's 42 years old, and what can we do? And what are the next steps? Is he going to main event WrestleMania? That's the line that seemingly at one point was thrown out there about how they're looking at talent and kind of, scouting what they want to have for the future. And are these people who are going to main event WrestleManias? If not, they're expendable. They're just another number. They're just, here you go. Cross it off the list, on to the next one. Like that's how, and that's the corporate nature of it. Like that's how it feels sometimes with WWE. And that does not do them any favors when it comes to, the fans and how they perceive this giant company that has all the money in the world. And it's just it feels very corporate like, to where there's no emotion that goes into it. There's none of that. And look, I mean, I'm not the one running the billion-dollar business, and so it is one where it's not just a WWE. Like you can see this in any sector in business. Like this is what companies can do, and so you know what, business is business. This is how it works, and we're on to the next thing. How can we find a way to make more money? How can we find a way to make our budget look better? And all of this other stuff. And that's just, unfortunately, like you said, even if, enjoy it for the wrestling, but, the business side of this can be certainly cruel sometimes. And we've seen that with all of these releases. With Morrison, it is someone that, and everybody's already started on the rounds on Twitter, which we knew would happen. But I mean, yes, like John Morrison's going to become Johnny Impact or Johnny Elite or Johnny Dynamite, Johnny Rampage, go up and down the line. He's got a lot of options. I don't think that there will be any shortage of opportunities for him. And of course, Taya Valkyrie now, former Frankie Monet, she has been outspoken to say the least about this whole scenario. And some of the things she said. I mean, you look at that, and I know this is kind of separate of just these eight talents that we're talking about, but I mean, she was not holding back anything, and you can't blame her because that's what she said. She's sort of, wrestlers are going to be in a position where this is their livelihood. Like this is what they have, to do to support themselves, their families, and all of this other stuff. So I completely, I don't know why people think that, and of course it is social media sometimes can be the extreme, as we know, but they should be able to support, their significant others in this case, when you look at her and John Morrison, but really anyone. This is their profession, and talent want to make sure they're being treated correctly. And this again goes back to the independent contractor discussion that's been had for so long about what you can do to protect wrestlers, and we've talked about, everyone's mentioned the potential union and all this stuff, and if it'll ever happen, all of that. And I mean, again, all of these people have their right to say whatever they want. After a company just throws you to the side and says, "All right, on to the next," like that, you can say whatever you want, and I don't blame any of them for being outspoken. Especially we talked about it with Frankie Monet or Ty Valkyrie. Like it's just, I mean, she was with the company not long at all. Basically uproots everything, moves, and she's not there long enough. And what does she do? She gets a text, email, call, whatever, and hey, budget cuts. Thanks for coming. See ya. Like that's it. Like that's just sort of the nature of how WWE does business with this kind of stuff. And when it comes to letting go of talent, so I mean, for John Morrison, those two could certainly reunite somewhere. And I think, as we always say, when you have a name like this, and it's just AEW is going to be the company that comes up. There is going to come a point though where for AEW, I mean, they're not going to be able to take on any more talent. Have we reached that point? I mean, the roster's already big. I don't know, but for AEW, it's still, you are looking at the value too of a John Morrison or someone like that being able to come in and have an opportunity to perhaps do some things that, when you look at their roster, when you look at his style, John Morrison with Dante Martin and and people, and going down the line, like there's just There's so many possibilities, and so that is going to continue to be a very curious thing. And yes, there will come a point where AEW cannot add any more of these talents to their roster, but I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think they'll just continue to sort of cycle people in and out, and we'll see kind of what comes of it. But John Morrison, he will have no lack of opportunities, just given the name value, and everything that he's accomplished in wrestling. Even though I think this latest WWE run left a lot to be desired. All right, let's go to the big one here, and I think again this is one that there was a lot of hesitation about what was going to happen to Hit Row when they made the switch from NXT to the main roster, and I put it on Twitter, like, it is just incredible to think of. We all had concerns, I think, and we were just kind of curious, are they actually going to make this work? Because it was a hot act. Like, you had a hot act in NXT that had pretty much gotten themselves over with what they could do. Very entertaining group, a lot of charisma. And it was just, we've said it too many times, is what is going to happen when they basically go into a different universe, the different WWE universe here from NXT to the main roster. And it is just incredible to think that, in a span of basically a little over a month and a half, something like that, the entire group was released. And it's just, I can't even, it's hard to wrap your head around it because, when BFAB was released, I don't know that what the expectation was. I mean, you thought that maybe this was just one of those where, for whatever reason, the powers that be just decided that they did not need her in the group, and they were going to go forward. And we heard all the speculation about kind of what the WWE thought of Hit Row, and of course there was all of the rumors and backstage gossip about they were being seen as a group that you could look at AJ Francis, Top Dollar, and think that he could be the one that stands out. But you also had, certainly, Swerve and Adonis, like, those guys were certainly talented in their own right. And so, but now, like, you just fast forward, and there was clearly something to that when BFAB was released, several weeks ago. Again, we're not even talking about that long ago at this point. And it's just, for the entire group to be released that quickly, to go from an overact like that to going to the main roster. And I know that Fightful Select, Sean Ross Sapp had put out a report on Friday about how there was a lot of uncertainty creatively as to what to do with Hit Row. And, there was, should they be baby faces? Should they be heels? Who should be the leader of the group? What's their direction going to be? That was all mentioned in that report. And I'm just sitting back thinking, wow, like, that is where it got to, wondering what do we do, period. Like, all those questions, those three topics about babyface, heel, leader, direction, all three of those things were essentially defined in NXT, and you knew exactly what you could do with this group. But yet, once you just make that one little change, that changing the environment from NXT to the main roster, everything changes. And it's just, all of a sudden you have no idea what to do with this group. And I just I don't even know what to say about that. And yes, like, for me personally, like, I thought that Swerve was probably, that person that still, I mean, I think he's going to probably be someone, and that's not to knock the rest of them, but, I've always just enjoyed his work. And I think that he'll probably be scooped up by AEW, be my guess. I mean, I think that, he's just got a lot to offer in terms of what he can do, both in and outside the ring. So, but, I mean, I know there was a lot more, discussion about Top Dollar and just kind of his, I guess, behavior on social media, and all of this was mentioned, and sort of the getting too comfortable. I think that was the line that was used in one of the reports, just kind of backstage, just kind of feeling like maybe, I guess you're set in your role, and, you have nothing to worry about in terms of losing your job. Well, here they are. And this is one that I think everyone was a little, worried about what was going to become of Hit Row after they, made the switch to the main roster. And clearly it was justified, because WWE had no idea what to do, clearly, with this group, and ultimately decided that they were expendable. And, it's interesting to think, right? Like, they had just basically, tried to run an angle or something. Was it last week on SmackDown, or I don't even remember. It all runs together at this point. But I mean, it's just, so this was a very with all of these, you have to think that like this was a pretty quick decision. Um, and that is that environment in and of itself. That I think is the bigger concern. Is this is some these are decisions that are being made, like we said. I mean, maybe they are premeditated in terms of they've been, had this list and we're just going to do it at different intervals, perhaps. But it doesn't seem that way. It seems like there are some days where perhaps, or they're coming into the week or coming into the day saying, "All right, you know what? We need to do this today. Let's just get it. Here we go. We don't care. We don't care what creatively has happened. These people have got to be let go." And that's where I think from a fan standpoint, what is the reason to get invested in any of the storylines on WWE TV when you know just at a whim, this company is just going to all of a sudden turn around and say, "All right, you know what? Actually, we don't care. We don't care anything about this story. Nothing. We're letting this person go. Like because we just need to, do what we need to do." And I know like that is business, and at any time, like someone can get fired from their job at any moment. But it's harder, I think, when you're talking about the creative aspect and the story aspect of what you're trying to do in professional wrestling is you're trying to do weekly episodic television, as they like to tell us. And that is following the story week to week in some form or fashion. And then just completely uproot everything, which again goes back to the hit row scenario of you have the entire group come up, seemingly, getting ready to set off in this story direction of somewhere, and then you let one member go, and then now what? Several weeks later, you let the rest of the group go, and so any investment you had in this group, thinking that there was going to be some direction, any investment you put into that was a complete waste of time. That's what they're telling you. As why put your time into it when at any point we can let anyone go? And they've almost like it is like it's like we've been scared into thinking, "Oh, well, I really enjoy this on Raw or SmackDown or wherever, but this person could be fired tomorrow. I don't know if I should get that invested in it." And that is the unfortunate nature, I think, of this trend that is happening. And I think that does not do WWE any favors when it comes to what their fan base is going to perhaps put into it. And the unfortunate fact is, if you want to prove it the other way, this company can lose viewers. They can lose some of the other stuff to an extent. Now, obviously, they can't just bottom out and everyone stops watching and then they've got a problem. But they have these deals, these billion-dollar deals. They've got Saudi Arabia where they can make whatever astronomical amount of money on a single night, and that is where WWE has gotten so big. And everyone always asks the question: is WWE too big to fail? Of course, that was the whatever the popular line many years ago. But it's like I at this point, there's a lot of different ways you could go about, what is the next step for this company and where are they ultimately headed? Are they headed for a sale? I don't know, but there's just with moves like this, there's just a lot more sort of questions, and that's where again, from a fan experience, I find it harder to sit back and to really get fully invested in anything on their programming because you just don't know now. They have set this precedent to where, hey, we may be doing a storyline the week before with someone, but we could also change our mind very quickly and just decide to release them for quote unquote budget cuts the following day or the following week. So sorry that you wasted your time on them. Like that is just that is the part that I think is it can shake you as a fan. And so yeah, I know I'm all over the place on this, but like there are just so many thoughts I think that tie into some of these releases. And I think that one in particular, like I said, with Hit Row, where it just seemed like there was going to be a direction for this group when they, they're drafted and all this, and then nothing. That you just get, any hope you had just taken away because it's just not, it was not in the cards for them. But we'll quickly run through the rest of the list here. Tegan Nox, of course, you hate it for Tegan Nox, and I know everyone has said that, but my goodness. I mean, you think about what she's gone through injury wise, and just for her to even be in the position to be wrestling, given some of the injuries she's had, of course, with the ACL and all that, like it's incredible to think that she still is doing what she's doing. But for her, Perhaps we should have looked at this and said, well, clearly WWE's never going to use her right on the main roster because I think the one thing we were laughing about, and it's unfortunate we were laughing about this, and it was not on the performers, but when she and Shotzi were brought up, and what was it? Did they win a couple matches against Natalya and Tamina? And I think they won. What was it, 2 matches maybe? And maybe I'm wrong about the count on that, but and they never got a title shot. Like they just beat them twice, I think, and never got a shot at the titles. It's just like that's when I think, really, to me, like that's not just storyline inconsistency. That's just we just need to fill time, and we don't care if it doesn't make sense. Like we're just going to fill time, and that again, from an investment standpoint, just makes it so hard to get invested when you see stuff like that. Are like, well, wait a second, the 2 challengers who just came up from NXT, red hot now because they've beaten the champions a couple times in some form or fashion. But they're not going to really get a chance at the titles. That's no big deal. It's just like when you treat your fan base like they're just morons sometimes, that also, I think, can rub you the wrong way. And that is another, I think, significant flaw that WWE has is that, everyone that watches their programming just has no idea and doesn't understand. And, they're always smarter than the fans. And, it's just like, I just think that's too. When you insult fans' intelligence, that's another way to turn them off. And that's just, yeah, like that's something too. When I think about with Tegan Nox, I'm like, they bring them up as a team, and then of course they split them. I mean, Shotzi's been doing stuff on SmackDown, of course, but why bring the team up? Have them win a couple matches against the champions. I mean, think about that direction. You bring 2 NXT talents up, they beat the tag team champions, and then they don't get a championship match, and then you split them at the draft. It's just like that is a clear sign that you have no idea where you're going with these 2, and perhaps more direction with Shotzi. But you know what? I say that if WWE released Shotzi next week, would any of us be surprised? No, because that is the precedent that has been set at this point. WWE released Roman Reigns next week, would be surprised? Yes, but for the most part, outside of those top tier stars, going back to the Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, all those examples, anyone is clearly expendable for this company. And think about what that does for the backstage atmosphere. If I'm a WWE talent, I'm a top star walking around, how could I feel? I've earned this spot. Like I have, raised my profile and I've done all this, but yet at any time, for seemingly no doing of my own, $1 billion company is going to decide that budget cuts, they need to let me go. It's just, yeah, like it's a tough business to think about. And like I said, I can understand some of the business aspects of this. And really, when you think about it, I don't understand some of those parts. Sometimes when you look at it, it's just kind of, it's tough to understand with some of this stuff. But finishing up here, I mean, Drake Maverick had the best reaction of anything that you could find when it comes to these WWE releases. I mean, and he had it ready too. And I know everyone's brought that up, but I mean, Drake Maverick had the video ready, and it was, going off of his previous video when he was let go by WWE the first time. But then it was sort of adding in those layers of, look, you didn't get into professional wrestling to be a WWE superstar. You got into professional wrestling to be a professional wrestler. And I just thought that the video was just fantastic. If you haven't seen it, which again, I'm sure you have, it's been shared all over the place. I think John Cena, he reacted to it and said, to be sure to watch it. So that's when when John Cena's telling you to watch something that it doesn't take a shot at WWE, but it is a very strong message to say that, look, WWE is not the end all be all anymore. And that is where, when you do have someone like John Cena sharing something like that and responding to it in a positive way, that also speaks volumes, I think. But yeah, Drake Maverick's video is just incredible. And that's where, like, I'm watching this 5-minute video of Drake Maverick and I'm thinking, look at the creativity in this. I mean, this is very creative. This is very well put together. I mean, I don't know. Should Drake Maverick be, in some sort of creative role somewhere? Because this guy clearly understands, like, how to tell stories and understanding, like, just what you can do in this age, whether it's with social media or other stuff. I mean, and it was clear. I mean, he was slotted into this 24/7 division, which is just completely meaningless at this point. Nothing against any of the talents that are running around chasing the title, but it means nothing. WWE has never put any value into this title. And it's just, one of those where when you're slotted there, there's always going to be the possibility of this happening. And so Drake Maverick, he will also land on his feet somewhere because he's just got too good of a reputation, I think, in the industry. And again, very creative individual, very entertaining. So he'll be fine. Jaxson, Ryker, Shane Thorne, you can probably, you can group these guys, I think, together just because Shane Thorne, obviously, to a lesser extent, because he didn't, outside of just the awful retribution stuff, wasn't really ever a factor on the main roster. And again, when you're stuck with that, which, as we said, we go back to the Mia Yim thing or any of those, like you can kind of look at it from that standpoint too. When you just are portrayed, and WWE has that control over how you're portrayed on television, and you are thrust into that role, you have very little chance of success. And it's just there's again, you can make the best gimmick work. And I know, like, what is the one? So, there's someone that's always talked about sort of the Red Rooster example of Terry Taylor back in the day with the Red Rooster gimmick. And well, could have found a way to make it work. No, you can't. You can't make a way to make a Red Rooster gimmick work. Just like this retribution stuff, it's just impossible, I think, to it's hard to wear like the stink of the retribution stuff. And that's why I think for Shane Thorne, just never really, was able to do a whole lot beyond that. But he's another one that, you kind of saw, when he was in NXT and such, like he's talented. He'll find work. I have no doubt. And, Jaxson, Ryker, obviously there was a lot of, people on different sides of Jaxson, Ryker in terms of what they thought, of him as a talent. And certainly, when you look at the stuff, it's just, again, like there was just not a whole lot to what the direction was going to be. I know we had the thing with Elias and all of that, but really, beyond that, there just was not, are you shocked that Jaxson, Ryker was let go among this group? Probably not, just because he was another one that, yes, they used him occasionally, but, was never really someone, I think, that was going to get, that top tier push or top tier, view as a star in WWE. And so I think, again, that's just, as we've said, everyone is kind of expendable when you look at it from their standpoint. And, when you have people lower down the card, it's just, it's a nature of what they're doing at this point, I think, with that. So, yeah, those were the 8 that were released. And, is there going to be more? Probably. Like at this point, that's the expectation. There probably is going to be more. And I think that's just kind of the nature of where things are with WWE. And it's just I don't even know how else you kind of respond to this stuff. And I don't think I've seen people say this too. No, like it's not good to be numb to it either, because these are, again, people's livelihoods. And but my goodness, when they just do this time after time, and it's just they have clearly, set a course for where they want to go. And, coming off of their lowest NXT rating, viewership, whatever, of that era on USA Network, maybe they've just decided, hey, we're gonna take our lumps now, and we're gonna build for the future and hope for the best. And if that's what they're doing, then hey, good luck. See if it works, and I guess go from there, because they have the money to throw around, but apparently they don't have the money to throw around to the talent that they've released at this point, and they want to try to focus on other things. And we will see, I guess, what comes of that. But those were, again, more WWE releases, and I'm sure there'll be more information coming out on the specifics behind this, maybe what led to some of these releases. Of course, pretty much the majority of the talent, I think, have already reacted on social media. So you can find all of their reactions and everything over at 411mania.com. Got all the news, everything kind of surrounding this. And so be sure to check out everything over there. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Any podcast app you use, search for 411 on Wrestling. And as always, we will have the link to the GoFundMe for Larry Zonka's family in the show notes. So be sure to continue to share and contribute to that if you can. Survivor Series coming up on Sunday, and all the coverage of that as well over at 411mania.com with the news, reviews, and some columns as well. Steve Cook just did his top 7 Survivor Series moments column. We've also got a 411 Fact or Fiction with myself included in that as well. Pretty fun to discuss 5 topics heading into Survivor Series. I think there's a couple maybe that are non-Survivor Series related, but you can check that out on the site as well. So you can find that all at 411mania.com. www.wrestlingbuddies.com. But thanks as always for listening to the podcast, and we'll talk to you next time. You're on 411 on Wrestling Podcast.